Welcome to this explanation on how to play and make the most out of the utility simulation management game. So my name is Andres. I took part in developing the updated version of this game, and I'm going to walk you through some of the key aspects, some of the key considerations you should take into account when playing this game to make sure that you are successful, that you enjoy it, and that you learn along the process. So, to start off, first things first, what are the objectives of this game? Why are you doing this, right? One of the reasons that we've created this game is that we find that utility staff, management utility staff, and the operational staff, they tend to be faced with a lot of challenges on their day-to-day operations and ongoings. And a lot of these times, they have to make decisions on things that compete with each other. They have to decide where they're going to invest their resources among a list of options. They have to decide whether they're going to go for service expansion or for environmental protection. And this is a very lived reality of the utilities, and through this game we hope to give you the experience of what it's like to begin to manage these kinds of competing ideas within a controlled team, a small team, a controlled space that will allow you to explore, have discussions, and get a taste of what that's like. The key part here, of course, is that within your team members, you will have to negotiate different approaches, different ideas, different reasonings behind why you will take certain decisions about what will happen with your utility. This is the nature of what making decisions is like in real life. There's different staff members from different teams, from different departments that have to come and propose different strategies in order to make sure that their own interests within the organization are taken into account and are acted upon. So a lot of this exercise will be you negotiating with your team members on what the best decisions are based on the available data that you have and the goals that you will have set forth in your strategy. And finally, the core part of this game, you could say the bottom line of what you're trying to do is you're trying to save your utility from bankruptcy. You're trying to turn over this utility, which is in the direction of going bankrupt. In order to do that, the game begins with giving you an initial investment loan, free of return. It's not so much a loan as it is a donation. And it's up to you to make the most of that initial investment money that you have in order to try and survive over a period of years, up to a maximum of 10, which is what the game runs through. So let's get started with some of the details that you need to do before you start the game. You will have received a user manual. It's really important that you take a look at what that user manual has. Read it in detail because it's going to give you a few key aspects of the situation. It's going to give you a perspective of what the local, national context is for your water utility, what the city's context is. It's going to give you some key information in terms of what kind of population is like, what kind of income they have, the type of changes that you might have. So it gives you a really good context. The second part is that it tells you what your key performance indicators are. It gives you a clear show, as you can see here, of where your efforts need to be focused on. What key performance indicators do you have at hand that let you know what the health of your utility is, how well it's performing or how badly it's performing. And finally, because you're negotiating in your teams, as I mentioned, this user manual also has a clear description of what each role within the team is trying to achieve: the managerial role, the financial role, the operational role, and so on. So make sure you read this and you're very familiar with your role, because this is the position from which you will start negotiating and from which you will be evaluated. Now, also before you start, I want to take a closer look at that now, is the way we play this game is through a decisions template. So what will happen is you will receive an Excel file which gives you the set of decisions you can make within a year. As you can see here in the decision template, there are a set of decisions that you can make in basically 5 categories: financial, infrastructural, human resources, maintenance, and capacity development. It is important that you get familiar with what these decisions are so you know how you're going to negotiate. You have an initial guess of which ones relate to your role, and more importantly as well, it will help you identify what kind of causal relations there are between the decisions you make in your investment and the results you get. Of course, part of this is each decision has a certain cost. You will also find the cost of these decisions so you can plan your investments. And finally, there's specific formats in which we need you to input the decisions in your decisions template, which I will cover now in this example.
Here's the decision sheet, right? So for your financial decisions, we need you to put in the information as a total value. That means if you want 60% of the subsidy to be used, then put 60%. If you want your in-house tariff to go from 0.6 to 0.8, then you put 0.8. Same for the other one. So you give us the actual value. Keep in mind that there's a limit to the amount of increase that you can have in your tariffs due to popular unrest, political decisions, and so on and so forth. That limit is now, for these ones, for your infrastructural decisions, your maintenance decisions, and your capacity decisions, what we're asking for is the number that you would like to increase on things, right? So if you would like to add 20 kiosks, you would write 20 here. You would not write 646, because if I see that, what I understand is that you want to add an additional 646. So in these, that's why it says additional on the left-hand side under the names. You need to put what you want to add. So this would make it 20 additional kiosks. Remember, you need to add 1 kilometer, have at least a new kilometer for every kiosk, so 20, so on and so forth. The only area where you can use negative numbers to subtract things will be in the human resources decision if you want to fire someone. So if you wanted to add a business director, you would put 1, and that would bring your directors up to 20. If you wanted to fire a manager, you would write -1, and that would bring them down to 64 in total. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're filling these out. It'll be really helpful for us when you're filling out the information.
So now that you've been familiar with the decisions that you need to make and how the game is played, here are some key recommendations for you while you play, and some key aspects that you need to keep in mind while you're developing your plans and your decisions. So first part, this usually happens. The simulation is programmed in such a way that you can only add new water kiosks when you add new network. So for every new kiosk you want to add, you need to add a new kilometer of network from the existing one. You can do this in different years where you have an extension of the network and then you add the water kiosks, but you cannot add water kiosks over the existing network at the beginning of the game. So keep that in mind when you make decisions, otherwise your model will not work. Second, you will see that you have 3 options for meters: improving in quality but also increasing in cost. You can only replace meters from a lower quality to a higher quality once all your connections are metered. So you need to make sure that you have connected every metered connection that is possible to then upgrade. I will let you know when you reach that point because your meters will need to be changed, but it's important for you to keep this in mind if you're planning on changing the meterage that you have. Of course, tariffs can't be 0. You can't have free tariffs, so don't give us a 0 amount of tariff. What you do need to do, what you can have a 0 percentage is the subsidy. The subsidy can go from 0 to 100%. And linking back to these all connections, a lot of the times you're going to want to figure out what the exact population is or the connections that you have. Because it's a changing environment, you will have to estimate this, which is again why we will provide you with the information of when the meter connections are limited and you can switch to new meters. But until then, throughout the game, you will not be able to know what the exact population is. So keep that in mind. This is actually quite common for water utilities to operate under this constraint. As you play, as you get to your results, and we'll see what the results look like in a second, it's important for you to realize that there are some decisions that you make that are interrelated. They impact more than one key performance indicator, either positively or negatively. And some of them have a longer term impact. So I'm going to start with a key one, which is utility efficiency. You never really see this value, okay? But depending on the decisions you make within your utility, particularly related to your staff, the efficiency of your utility, how well the people in your water utility are capable of implementing their jobs, your utility efficiency will increase. And this is something that impacts most of your KPIs across the board. Obviously, a more efficient utility is better at implementing the type of outcomes or processes that it needs to do within the same budget. So keep that in mind. You won't see it, but have it in the back of your mind. You will become aware of this as you play. Maintenance of some of the infrastructure, some of the trainings that you have, and you'll have to discover this as you play the game, have a longer term impact. That is, they don't only impact the year in which you do it, but they can have an impact years later. The lack of maintenance can also do that, so keep that in mind. And finally, be aware that, like with any water utility, your situation can drastically change between years. So it might be that going from one year to the next, you are faced with a new set of challenges, and we will warn you of these when it's time to make your decisions. Okay? So now, let's go and take a look at what your results will look like, what you will receive, so you have an idea of how to interpret the outcomes of the decisions you've made so you can make your new decisions. So, you're going to receive two PDF files. The first one relates specifically to your utility. That's the one that we see here on the screen. And what this one does is it has a few set of indicators, key indicators that it'll show you. It has the financial ones, your full cost recovery, financial balance, so on and so forth. You'll have your commercial ones that have the service affordability, collection efficiency, water losses, commercial, customer satisfaction, the operational ones, and then you will have a general one for the water balances. Now, the way to interpret these results, and we'll take coverage for example, is that you will see that there's an initial value followed by a set of years that come after it. Now, we're going to look at it as if you made decisions for year 2021. What that means is that you will receive the values here are of the decisions leading up to 2021. The ones that are after that, so 2022 onwards, are projections. Projections made from if you remain in the status quo. I mean, if you keep making the same decisions that you made before, your outputs will look somewhat like that. And so these are good indications to make decisions in the next year, particularly if you've kept an eye on how they change with the decision you've made previous years. Because they're projections, of course, they're not perfect. And again, there's a lot of interrelation between different factors in the decisions that you make. So you might see that some things don't change exactly as you expect. Experiment, try, and give it a go. You will get these at the end of every round. In the other case, what you will get are the second file that you will get are benchmarking results that look like these, and you will be benchmarked against 3 other utilities. We'll tell you what your utility number is for each one. And what this allows you to see is it allows you to compare how you're performing on these key performance indicators here, these 6 key performance indicators that you have. It allows you to evaluate how you're performing against other utilities and see who's doing better and who's not. In the end, you should keep in mind the following. your water utility, Macondo's water utility that you're managing, it depends on your decisions. If you are unable to respond to the type of outcomes that you're receiving based on your results, you might go bankrupt. If you go bankrupt, game over. And of course, now that you've seen the benchmarking results, you know that the competition is on. So it's among yourself to see who can have the best running utility, who can provide the best turnover for their utility. Thank you very much for listening to this short video. I hope you enjoy playing the utility management simulation game. Good luck.